The most feared man in the city hadn't cried in 8 years. Not when rivals threatened his empire. Not when men he trusted put knives in his back. Not when he buried the only people he ever truly loved. But on a cold, rain-soaked Tuesday night, in a back alley that had seen more darkness than most people could imagine, a 7-year-old girl with a torn coat and a one-eyed stuffed rabbit walked straight through his perimeter, past armed men who should have stopped her, and held out that toy with both hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. She said one sentence. 9 words. And Dante Varro, the man who controlled half a city, who had never hesitated a single day in 15 years, stood completely frozen. His most trusted lieutenant had been beside him for 11 years. He had never seen anything stop his boss. Not guns. Not money. Not threats. But a child's words did what none of those things ever could. What she said, and what Dante did next, will stay with you long after this story ends. Stay with me. Because this is not just a story about power. It's about the thing that power can never protect you from. And the small, worn-out rabbit that unlocked a door that had been sealed shut for 8 years. The rain came down hard that night. It hit the concrete like it was angry about something. The alley behind Caruso's restaurant smelled like wet stone and cigarette smoke. 3 men stood against the wall, hands at their sides, eyes down. They knew better than to look up when Dante Varro was talking. Dante was not a tall man. He didn't need to be. He stood in the middle of that alley in a dark coat, and the men around him went quiet the way people go quiet in church. Not because they were told to. Because something in the air said this is not the moment to make noise. He was in the middle of something important. A debt. A decision. The kind of night that ended one way or another and left no room for surprises. That's why no one understood how the girl got through. She appeared at the edge of the light like she had always been standing there. Small. Maybe 7 years old. Her coat was too thin for the weather. Her shoes had a hole near the left toe. She had dark eyes that didn't look frightened, and that was the strangest part. A child who walked into Dante Varro's collection night should have been terrified. She wasn't. She walked straight toward him. His men moved to stop her, but Dante raised one hand, and they froze. The girl reached into the pocket of her coat. She pulled out a small cloth rabbit. One of its button eyes was missing. The fur was worn smooth in the places she had held it most. It was clearly the only thing she owned that mattered. She held it out to Dante with both hands. He looked at it. Then he looked at her. She said something. One sentence. Quiet, like a secret. Dante Varro, the man who had not flinched in 15 years, went completely still. Nobody in that alley breathed. Marco, Dante's most trusted lieutenant, had worked beside him for 11 years. He had watched Dante negotiate with men twice his size. He had seen him walk into rooms where guns were already drawn and walk back out without a scratch. He had never, not once, seen Dante look the way he looked right now. Like something had reached inside his chest and grabbed hold. The girl kept her arms out, the rabbit still offered, patient the way only children can be patient. She wasn't performing. She wasn't afraid. She was simply waiting. Dante reached out slowly and took the toy from her hands. He turned it over once. His face gave nothing away, but his jaw was tight. Marco had learned to read the small signs. The jaw meant something had landed. Something real. "What's your name?" Dante asked. His voice came out softer than usual. "Mia," she said. "Where did you come from, Mia?" She turned and pointed down the alley. Away from the restaurant. Into the dark. "The building with the yellow door," she said. "The one that smells like bleach. They keep the lights off at night so nobody looks in." Marco felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. He knew that building. He stepped close to Dante and spoke low and fast. Boss. That building went active 3 weeks ago. New operation. We haven't moved on it yet because we didn't have confirmation of what they were running. Dante didn't take his eyes off the girl. And now? Marco said nothing. He didn't have to. Dante crouched down to Mia's level. The big man in the dark coat, folding himself down until he was face to face with a 7-year-old in a torn coat and a broken shoe. Are there other children in that building? Mia nodded. 11, she said. I counted. Dante Varro had rules. Not written ones. Not the kind you post on a wall or recite at meetings. The kind that live in your bones and don't move no matter how much money someone offers or how much pressure someone applies. Rule 1, a deal made is a deal kept. Every time. No exceptions. Rule 2, civilians stay out of it. Families, neighbors, strangers on the street, they live their lives, and his world does not touch them. Rule 3, the one that mattered most, the one that was less a rule and more a religion, children are untouchable. Always. Anyone who crossed that line in his territory answered to him personally, and that conversation never ended well for the one who crossed it. His men knew these rules. The people who did business with him knew these rules. Even his enemies knew them, which is why most of them respected him even while they feared him. He had built his empire on a simple idea: there is a difference between a powerful man and a savage. Dante intended to stay on the right side of that line for as long as he lived. But there was something else. Something that only Marco knew, and even Marco never spoke of it out loud. 8 years ago, Dante had a daughter. Her name was Sophia. She was 4 years old. She had her mother's smile and her father's eyes and a habit of saying things that were so honest they stopped you mid-sentence. Sophia and her mother were killed in a car accident on a Tuesday afternoon in October. A drunk driver. A wet road. A decision that took 2 seconds and lasted forever. Dante had never spoken her name since the funeral. His whole empire, the discipline, the code, the absolute wall he kept between his world and innocent people, was built over that wound. Quietly. Completely. Like concrete poured over something you can never dig back up. The sentence Mia had said to him in the alley was a phrase Sophia used to say. A small, private, specific phrase that had never existed outside their home. Dante had no explanation for it. He didn't need one yet. He just knew it had changed the night entirely. The man they were looking for had a name, Soren. No last name that anyone had confirmed. No country anyone could pin down with certainty. He had arrived in the city 4 months ago, quiet and organized, the way a professional arrives, not rushing, not announcing, just setting up. His front was a charity. It had a proper name, a website, printed brochures with photographs of smiling children. It raised money for orphaned kids in unstable regions. It had a board of directors, 3 of whom were completely real and completely unaware of what their signatures were attached to. Underneath that, Soren ran a pipeline. Children who had no paperwork. Children who had fallen out of group homes, or had never been in the system at all. He moved them through the charity's network, gave them new documents, and sold them into situations that didn't have clean names. He was not chaotic. He was not violent in the loud, obvious way. He was bureaucratic. Cold. He treated children the way a warehouse manager treats inventory: count them, label them, move them, replace the ones that go missing. He had chosen Dante's territory deliberately. He had studied the city's power map and concluded that Dante's policy of non-interference, his refusal to get involved in operations that didn't directly touch his business, created a gap he could operate inside. He had been wrong about one thing. He had not accounted for a girl with a worn-cloth rabbit and a sentence that nobody should have known. Dante sat at the table in the back room of the restaurant. The rabbit was in front of him. He hadn't moved it. Around him, his 3 most senior men waited. What do we know about the building? Dante asked. Marco laid it out. 12 children confirmed. 2 guards on rotation. Documents likely kept on site. Then we go tonight, Dante said. Quiet. Bring me everything on paper. No one asked if he was sure. They brought Mia to a property on the north side of the city. It was a townhouse Dante owned under a company name. Clean, warm, nothing fancy. A woman named Rosa, who had worked in Dante's household for 9 years, was already there by the time they arrived. Rosa had a round face and steady hands and a kind of calm that children trusted without knowing why. Mia walked in, looked around once, and sat down on the couch like she had decided it was acceptable. Rosa brought her soup. Mia ate it carefully, without rushing, which told Dante something. A child who has been hungry enough doesn't trust food to stay. She ate like someone who had learned to be careful about good things. He watched her from the doorway for a moment. Then he walked in and sat in the chair across from her. "You'll stay here tonight," he said. "You're safe." Mia looked at him with those steady dark eyes. "Are the others safe too?" "My men are getting them now." She considered this. Then she nodded, like she had approved the plan. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the rabbit. She set it on the couch cushion beside her. Dante looked at it. "You want that back," he said. It wasn't a question. "I gave it to you," she said. "But you can give it back if you want." "I don't need it right now." "You looked like you did." He stared at her. In 11 years, Marco had seen grown men crumble in front of Dante. He had never seen Dante at a loss for words. But watching from the hallway, Marco saw his boss sit very still for a moment, looking at a 7-year-old girl, and say absolutely nothing. Then Dante reached over and placed the rabbit gently back in Mia's lap. "Get some sleep," he said. His voice was rough at the edges. He stood, straightened his coat, and walked out. In the hallway, he stopped with his back to the wall and closed his eyes for 3 seconds. Then he went back to work. The operation at the Yellow Door building took 40 minutes. 11 children. Ages 5 to 12. Cold, quiet, most of them too exhausted to react to being moved. Dante's men worked without noise, without incident. The 2 guards on rotation made the mistake of being in the same place at the same time. They would not be working for Soren again. The documents were exactly where Marco expected. 3 folders and a locked box. Inside the box, a ledger, a list of names, and a set of wire transfer records that connected Soren's charity directly to an account registered to Deputy Commissioner Alan Greaves. Marco photographed everything before the physical copies were secured. The 11 children were placed with a network of people Dante trusted, separate locations, no group placement, each one with a vetted adult. It was not a perfect solution. But it was better than the building with the yellow door. When Marco brought the files to Dante the next morning, Dante read through them without speaking. He turned each page slowly. When he reached the deputy commissioner's name, he stopped. "How deep?" he asked. "Deep enough," Marco said. 2 prior investigations into Soren's charity were flagged and buried. Both times, Greaves was the signature on the suppression order. Dante set the file down. "So we have a local operation with political protection." "Yes. If we move against Soren without removing Greaves first, he triggers a legal siege that hits us before it ever touches Soren. That's the trap." Dante nodded slowly. It was a smart setup. He almost respected it. Almost. "There's a gala," Marco said carefully. "Next Friday. Soren's charity is the headline sponsor. Greaves is the guest of honor. 400 people. The Meridian Hotel." Dante looked up. "That," he said quietly, "is where we end it." 3 days after the girl arrived, Dante came to check on her and found the rabbit on the windowsill. Not on the couch where she slept. Not in her hands. On the windowsill, sitting up straight, its one remaining button eye catching the morning light. Rosa appeared beside him. She moves it every morning, she said quietly. Different place each time. Yesterday it was on the kitchen table. Dante said nothing. She's doing well, Rosa continued. Slept through the night last night, first time. She asked me this morning if you had a favorite color. He turned to look at her. What? She wants to know your favorite color. And whether you eat breakfast. Rosa paused, a small smile at the corner of her mouth. She said you look like someone who skips breakfast and then wonders why everything feels harder than it should. Dante stared at her. She's 7, Rosa said gently. He walked to the window. He picked up the rabbit and turned it in his hands. The worn fur. The missing eye. The places rubbed smooth from years of being held by small hands. He had a daughter once who carried a toy like this. A small stuffed dog, gray, that had lost its tail somewhere between age 2 and 3. Sophia had not minded. She had named it Tail anyway, in honor of what it used to have. He set the rabbit back on the windowsill exactly as he found it. He went downstairs and told Rosa to make him breakfast. He stayed for an hour. When Mia came downstairs and found him there, she sat across from him and asked about his favorite color without any preamble, as if they were continuing a conversation already started. He told her blue. She told him hers was yellow. But not bright yellow. The yellow of old paper. The quiet kind. He thought about that for the rest of the day. Soren found out the girl was gone on day 4. He did not panic. Men like Soren don't panic. They calculate. He ran through the variables and the list of people capable of that kind of clean, quiet operation was very short. He sent a message through a lawyer, a real one, with a proper office, informing Dante's known associates that a ward of a registered charitable organization had been illegally removed from authorized care. That the charity intended to pursue all available legal remedies. That the safe return of the child would result in no further action. The message was careful. Not a threat. A reminder that Soren had a legal structure around him that made him hard to touch. Dante read it once. He folded it. He placed it in the file with the ledger and the wire transfers and the deputy commissioner's name. Then Soren hit one of Dante's operations. A small one. A storage facility on the east side. 2 of Dante's men were roughed up, not seriously. It was calibrated. Just enough force to say, I can reach you. Marco brought the report with a tight expression. He's testing you. Seeing if you'll back down. I know. Do you want to reconsider the timeline? Dante looked up from the file. I want to move faster, he said. Not slower. Marco nodded. He had expected that answer. He had been hoping for it. Outside, the city moved on the way cities do, completely unaware of the decisions being made inside quiet rooms. Decisions that would determine which version of itself it woke up to next week. In the townhouse on the north side, Mia was helping Rosa water the plants on the kitchen windowsill. The rabbit sat on the counter nearby, watching. Some things were already in motion that could not be stopped. The plan had 3 parts. Each one had to work. None of them could know about the others until the moment they all landed at once. The first part was the money. Dante had a contact, a man named Ellis who worked as an investigative accountant and owed Dante a significant favor. Ellis had spent 2 days going through the photographed financial records. He found what Dante needed, a direct chain of wire transfers from Soren's charity to a private account registered to Deputy Commissioner Alan Greaves. Clean. Documented. Unambiguous. Ellis delivered the records to a federal journalist and 2 investigators from the Financial Crimes Unit, a division that operated completely separately from the local police that Greaves controlled. By Friday evening, before the gala even began, those documents were in the right hands. The second part was the children. Soren had 3 other locations outside Dante's territory. Smaller operations, each running under a different charity name. Dante's men moved on all 3 simultaneously at 7 in the evening, the exact same hour the gala started. The children were extracted. Evidence packages were routed to law enforcement in each jurisdiction. Airtight. Untraceable to Dante. The third part was Soren himself. Dante entered the Meridian Hotel quietly, through a property developer who sat on 3 charity boards and could get him in without a second glance. He found a private room off the main corridor. He had someone inform Soren that an investor wanted a quiet word. Soren walked in expecting an opportunity. He had spent 4 months building a structure designed to make him untouchable. He was about to find out it no longer existed. Soren was not what people expected when they imagined someone who did what he did. He was ordinary looking. Medium height. Pale. Thin hair combed neatly to one side. He wore his tuxedo like he had been born in one. He walked into the small room with the easy confidence of a man who has never faced a consequence he couldn't manage. He saw Dante and stopped. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. He had studied Dante. He had concluded that Dante was manageable, a man with principles, which made him predictable. He was revising that conclusion now. Dante was sitting in one of 2 chairs. He gestured to the other. Sit down. Soren sat. He kept his expression neutral. Mr. Varro. I wasn't aware we had a meeting. We do now. I think there may have been some misunderstanding regarding. No misunderstanding. Dante reached into his jacket and placed a single sheet on the table between them. A printed summary of the wire transfer chain. Greaves's name at the bottom. Your protection ended 40 minutes ago. Federal investigators have the full file. Soren looked at the paper. Something moved behind his eyes, just briefly. Then the neutral expression returned. That's a significant claim. It's a documented fact. Your 3 other locations were cleared tonight. The children are safe. Law enforcement has full evidence packages for each site. Dante leaned back. This is already done. I'm not here to negotiate. Then why are you here? Dante looked at him for a long moment. To make sure you understand your one remaining option. You leave this city tonight. You leave this country within the week. You do not rebuild this operation anywhere that I have eyes. A pause. If I ever hear your name again, I won't send a lawyer. The room was very quiet. Soren understood. He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked to the door without looking back. Dante sat in that small room for a few minutes after Soren left. Not because he needed to rest. Because something was finishing in him, and he wanted to let it finish properly. 8 years ago, when Sophia died, something in him had gone very still. Not broken, broken implies something jagged and loud. This was quieter than that. Like a door closing in a room you can never enter again. He had built his whole life around that closed door. The code, the rules, the absolute wall between his world and the innocent, all of it was a way of honoring something he could no longer hold. He had thought that was enough. He had not expected a 7-year-old girl to walk through his perimeter in the rain, holding a one-eyed rabbit, and say the one sentence in the world that could reach him through that closed door. He still didn't have an explanation for it. He had stopped looking for one. Some things aren't puzzles to be solved. Some things are simply true. He stood. He buttoned his jacket. He walked outside into the cold air and called Marco. It's done, he said. All 3 locations are clear, Marco confirmed. Children are safe. Tips have been filed. Greaves is going to have a very difficult morning. And Soren took a car to the airport 40 minutes ago. Private terminal. Dante nodded once. Good. He stood on the pavement for a moment, looking up at the sky. The city hummed around him, taxis, voices, the low constant noise of a place that never really sleeps. He thought about a girl sitting at the top of the stairs with a rabbit in her lap, waiting to find out if the promise he had made was real. He got in the car and went to find out. Mia was awake when he arrived. It was past 10 at night. She should have been asleep. But she was sitting at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, the rabbit tucked under her arm, her feet dangling over the edge of the top step. Rosa stood in the hallway below with the expression of someone who had already tried 3 times to send her to bed. Dante walked in. Mia looked at him from the top of the stairs. He didn't say anything right away. He walked to the bottom of the staircase and looked up at her. Her eyes moved across his face, reading something there. Children do that, they look at faces the way adults look at documents, searching for the real information underneath the words. Whatever she found, she seemed satisfied with it. "You did it," she said. Not a question. "Yes. The other kids. They're okay. They're safe. All of them." She thought about this for a moment. Her feet swung gently. "What about the bad man? He's gone. He won't come back." Rosa watched from the hallway, very still, not wanting to interrupt. Mia reached into her lap and held the rabbit out toward him. The same gesture as the alley. Both small hands extended. The worn toy offered like something precious. Dante's chest tightened. He took a step up the stairs. He reached out. And then Mia pulled it back, just slightly, and shook her head. She smiled. A real smile. Quiet and warm, the kind that doesn't need an audience. She tucked the rabbit back under her arm and stood up from the step. "I wasn't giving it to you," she said. "I was just showing you I still have it." She walked past him down the stairs, said goodnight to Rosa, and went to bed. Dante stood on the stairs for a long moment. Then he sat down on the top step, in the exact spot where she had been, and stayed there in the quiet for a long time. The weeks that followed were different from anything Dante had known in a long time. Not quieter, his work was still his work. Deals still needed to be made. Problems still needed to be solved. Men still came to him with things that required decisions only he could make. But the texture of things had changed. He started eating breakfast. Rosa noted this without commenting directly, but he could see the small satisfied look she tried to hide. He stopped staying at the office until midnight. Not every night. But more nights than before. He found himself once, in the middle of a difficult conversation with a business associate, thinking about the fact that Mia had told him her second favorite color was the green of moss on old stones. He wasn't sure why that thought came to him in that particular moment. But it did. Mia herself was adjusting in ways that were sometimes straightforward and sometimes surprising. She was doing well with Rosa. She had started asking questions with the focused persistence of a child who has decided the world is worth understanding. She wanted to know how things worked, why the lake was a different color on cloudy days than on sunny ones, what language the pigeons near the window used when they talked to each other. She never talked about the building with the yellow door. Not once. Dante didn't press her. He trusted she would find her way to it in her own time. The rabbit continued its daily migrations. The windowsill. The kitchen counter. The arm of the chair near the door. Each morning it was somewhere new, as if quietly exploring the house on its own unhurried schedule. Dante had stopped being surprised by it. He had started, in some way he couldn't fully name, to look forward to finding it. 2 months after the night in the alley, Dante made a phone call to a lawyer he trusted, one with no connection to his business, and asked about the process for establishing legal guardianship of a child with no documented family. The lawyer asked several careful questions. Dante answered them. The lawyer was quiet for a moment. "This is something you want to do properly," he said. Not quite a question. "Yes," Dante said. "Completely properly. It will take time. Investigation, documentation, a home study. Whatever is required. He also established something else during those months. A fund, run through a legitimate non-profit, that provided legal support for children who fell through gaps in the system, kids without paperwork, kids whose cases had been mishandled, kids who needed an advocate and had nobody to ask. It had no public profile. It did not carry his name. It was infrastructure. The same way he thought about everything that truly mattered. Marco found out about it 3 weeks later through a mutual contact. He came to Dante's office, sat down, and looked at him for a long moment without speaking. "Don't," Dante said. "I haven't said anything. You were about to." Marco smiled, a rare thing, coming from him. "I was just going to say that your mother would have approved." Dante looked down at the papers on his desk. Something moved across his face, not quite a smile, but close to the neighborhood of one. "Get out of my office, Marco." Marco left. But he was still smiling when he closed the door. 14 months after a girl with a one-eyed rabbit walked into a rain-soaked alley and stopped a powerful man cold, things looked like this. Mia was in school. A private school, small, with good teachers. She was registered under a name Dante had arranged through proper channels, with documentation that was entirely legal. Her teachers said she was bright and direct and sometimes said things in class that made the adults around her stop and think. She still carried the rabbit in her backpack. Dante visited once a month. He came on Sunday afternoons, always with the same quiet arrival, always staying for a meal. They didn't talk about what had happened. They talked about ordinary things, what she was learning, whether the pigeons had figured out Rosa's new bird feeder, what he had seen that week that was worth remembering. At the end of every visit, as he stood to leave, Mia would reach into her backpack or her pocket and set the rabbit on the table between them for a moment. Every time, Dante would look at it and nod once. Every time, she would pick it back up, tuck it away, and walk him to the door. It was their language. It didn't need explaining to anyone. 14 months ago, that rabbit was the only thing a small girl owned. She had offered it to a stranger in the dark because something in her knew, the way children sometimes know things before adults do, that he needed it more than she did. She had been right. He had gone in as a man sealed off from everything soft, because soft things could be taken from you. He came out as something he hadn't been in 8 long years, a man with something to protect that he had chosen freely, not just built out of survival. The story did not end in violence or triumph. It ended on a Sunday afternoon, with a rabbit on a table, and a child walking a powerful man to the door, and both of them knowing, without a single word between them, that this was what safety felt like. Not the absence of danger. The presence of someone who would not leave.